and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. So, Americans just don't read anymore. I mean, I think this has been an ongoing issue for several decades now. And there was a recent study that showed that 46% of Americans didn't read anything, not one book. And 56% of people read one book or more. Now, does that include stuff that people had to read for work? Was it actual, leisure reading? Don't know. But I will tell you that even in the rare instance that somebody is an avid reader, people are just judgmental jerks about what it is that other people are reading. So, for example, this whole Luigi Mangione situation. Well, people grabbed onto his Goodreads, and of course the women start scanning over it, and they're like, ooh, what is he reading? Like, he's good looking, he reads books. Because let's face it, out of that 56%, a good portion of those people, I'm saying more than half, are probably women. I'm going to assume that more women read than men do. And that's just because I know in my life, when you work for a living, having the free time to actually read doesn't happen. But one thing that irritated me about this video where this chick is going through his Goodreads is she's finding all these books that she likes, where she's like, oh, he read this and he read that, and I'm so excited. And then she says, oh, he read Infinite Jest. Red flag. Which he also read the Unabomber's Manifesto, which a lot of people were pointing out. But no. She focused on Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace and said, this is a red flag. He read one of the hardest books you could read, and you're downplaying him for it. Like, what the hell? Oh no, he didn't read 50 Shades of Grey. How am I supposed to find my Mr. Grey if he's reading Infinite Jest? I remember a couple years ago, there was a woman I heard, she was talking about how every guy she dated in college had a copy of Infinite Jest on his bookshelf. And she's like, I don't know if they actually read it or not. I'm assuming they did because shit didn't work out. And it's like, what is it about this book where women just cringe at the fact that a guy had read it? Is it because he's able to dedicate himself to something, that it's like hard work, that, I don't know, maybe he finishes the book and comes across with the realization of he's just not willing to play games or put up with other people's bullshit? I don't know. I've only read excerpts from Infinite Jest. I read, what I did read was, I believe it was like the Pocket, David Foster Wallace, where it had essays, it had, God, I want to say the excerpt from Infinite Jest was an ungodly amount of pages. Like, it was only like a small section of the book, and I remember there being this insanely detailed fight scene where it was almost robotic in nature, where it was describing the punches and the injuries and what was happening to each person, and that, I don't know, it kind of took me out of the fight. Like, I understand that Wallace, he's the wallflower, right? He's the one that he sits at the side of the room and observes other people, and so you're seeing these stories from really his perspective and how he's viewing things and what he's taking from the situations. So you don't really see things from the protagonist or antagonist, but this whole notion of Americans not reading anymore, well, I gotta throw it in there. Schools are at fault. Like, they're still doing the book club. They still take the kids to the school library, which, even in my experience growing up, school libraries suck. They suck. It's usually like outdated shit. They don't have the budget to get new copies of new books. Everything's from 20, 30 years ago. There's not anything that actually is new and gravitates towards what kids are interested for that time period is what gets checked out and everybody's fighting over. And you can have the classics too. You can have like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and a bunch of stuff like that. Mouse and the Motorcycle, depending on the age range. But yeah, this whole kids are not reading. And if there's one thing I took from my oldest daughter being in school, is that they're more concerned about her being able to use a tablet than reading a book. And even spelling. Like, she doesn't have a weekly spelling test. Like, for me, it was every week. We had like 10 or 15 words every week we had to memorize and spell it correctly for the test. And her, it's like, I think we might get a list of stuff for her to memorize like once a month. And so I don't know what the priorities in schools are anymore when it comes to a lot of this stuff. On the upside, she likes going to school, she likes her teacher, and she likes the kids in her class, and she gets along with everyone. But when it comes to like functional reading, the other thing I'll point out about this is they try to say that college-educated people are the ones who continue to read later on in life. That is bullshit. That is 100% bullshit. I know this from the different various places that I used to work, where you think educated people with degrees or certifications or their bachelor, like, no. There's so many. Like, I would be sitting in a break room at the hospital reading a book, and for one, they think that you're just like screwing around and you're not really on break and you're just like killing time, and that's frowned upon. Like, how dare you read while on the clock? And it's like, I'm on my lunch. No, you're not. I'm on my lunch. But other people will come in, and these are like nurses and doctors and physician's assistant, like all these different people. And I would try talking to them about like whatever book I was reading, and most like 90% of them would say, oh, once I was done with school, I was done with books. So they don't continue on reading. They don't even continue reading for their own profession. Like, there's so many doctors I came across that once they graduated from medical school, any education in medicine ceased and ended. So you can have a doctor who's really good at his job, but then he's like 30, 40 years after he gets out of medical school, he doesn't know the latest treatments. He's still trying to do stuff from like the 1980s on patients who could have a better turnout if he had just kept up on whatever it is that he specialized in. That's not a thing. For a lot of these people, it's not a thing. They don't continue on. Nurses, like, unless it was 50 Shades of Grey, they weren't picking up a book. I heard one nurse talk about like, oh yeah, Harry Potter's pretty good. And it was because it was a fad. It had to be a fad. If it wasn't something that everybody else was doing, they weren't doing it. And the only reason they read those books was to fit in. So even when they are reading, it's not for enjoyment, it's for social credit, credit points. It's like, oh, you read that too? What did you think? So, yeah, from my understanding, like this study that came out, 56% of Americans read at least one book, and 46% didn't read anything. And then they're trying to say like, well, that's the poors. No, no, it's not. If you have an interest in something, you're going to read. If there's a series that you enjoy, you're going to read. And for most people, what they'd rather do is Netflix and chill, scroll on their phone, although from my understanding, like even social media use is down. And even in my case, like, yeah, I'm on YouTube a lot now, but that has a lot to do with like figuring out what people are interested in, keeping up with the comment section on my own videos, trying to build my channel. So it's really more of like, it's becoming a job, which I enjoy it. So is it really a job? I'm not being paid for it. So a hobby? Is it a hobby? And yeah, people aren't reading. And from the stuff I read previously, before this study that I came across, less people than the 56% actually read. I want to say it's like 10% or less of the American population are actually avid readers. The ones who go to the bookstore and pick up the latest James Patterson. Who are you? Why do you exist? How boring could you be? He doesn't even write those books. James Patterson hasn't written anything since 1985. So yeah, I don't know. Have you guys seen the same thing? I mean, are you experiencing the same thing with your kids in school? Like, I had to get to the point where my oldest daughter comes home from school, and before she can turn on the TV or grab the Switch or grab the tablet, before she can do any of that shit, she has to go over to her library, which she's got hundreds of books to choose from, pick one book. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It doesn't have to be Judy Blume or anything like that, where it would take like an hour or two for her to read. Just something like one of those like reading steps books. I think that's what they're called, where it's like level 2, 3, stuff like that. Just pick one of those books, sit down, read that book, come to me, tell me what the story is in your own words. Then you can go and veg out and become a zombie and, I don't know, develop autism or whatever the frick these kids have these days. But yeah, I actually had to take the initiative and have her start doing that, because if these schools aren't going to have them sit down and actually read books and figure out like what the story is and develop their vocabulary and their reading ability, like if they're going to expect these kids to like sit down and write book reports in like 3rd and 4th grade, but you're not having them read from kindergarten to 2nd grade, like what are you doing? You're just setting them up for failure. Like if they're not reading those books already, you're going to expect them to read something else later? Like this, there's a progression here. You've got to like build this stuff up. And no, I'm not an education expert, but the fact that they took phonics out of the schools and replaced it with some other garbage that raised the illiteracy rate nationwide should tell you something. True story. You can probably find a couple videos on YouTube about that too. So yeah, they're not teaching kids how to read properly. They're not having them read. They're sticking their face in front of tablets, which pisses me off. So my kids can sit at home all day with their face in a tablet. And I don't see the difference currently between that and what I hear they're doing at school. Like, why is this the case? And I don't know. I could go to the school and maybe dig into it a little bit more, but if we've learned anything from 2020, It's the fact that schools don't really want us asking questions as to what is happening with our kids in their facilities. Because holy crap, were parents pissed when they started seeing, what did your teacher just say to you? What are they teaching you? Oh, Martin Luther King is one of the founding fathers. The hell he is. Yeah. So that's going to be one of my goals this year. Like, I usually read a couple books a year. But I know I don't read enough. I don't read often enough. There's so many books on my to-read list. It's insane. You can check out my Goodreads under Matthew Gilman and see the stuff that I have read, the stuff that I want to read. And I almost think it's like a 50-50 split, because I've got over 1,000 books that I've read on there that are listed. And then I think I've got like another 900 or 1,000 that's on the I want to read list, which is insane, yes. But, you know, if I actually just sat down and, I don't know, read a couple books a week, I'd dwindle that down in like a decade, right? Granted, the list would continue to grow, but at least I'd be working towards some type of goal, right? I'd be checking off names on a list and learning something along the way and improving myself. And that's a lot of what this year is about already. Physically, I'm already taking care of that. Mentally, got some more work to do. So anyways, that's about it. Keep on typing.